Hi, I'm Caroline Litman. I'm an ex-NHS psychiatrist and I'm the mother of Alice Litman, a transgender woman who took her own life in May 2022, aged just 20 years old, after having waited almost 3 years for an appointment at a gender identity clinic. Alice was just a beautiful human being. I adored her. I have so many happy memories of Alice. I wouldn't know where to begin really to tell you which ones were my favourite. She was so full of fun and life as a young child. She was funny, she was smart, she was bright and engaging. She was so cooperative and she just behaved herself all the time. But she loved to dance, and I remember her as a toddler loving to dance, but she was too nervous to go to the girls' class, but she didn't want to go to the all-boys class I found for her either. So she just used to dance at home. And one of my happiest memories is from the Easter before she died, just a month before she died. She came home. We had such a lovely time. It was my birthday. We'd been to the theatre. We'd gone to restaurants. She was more outgoing than she had been for a long, long time. And we had a kind of impromptu kitchen disco, and she danced as if she didn't have a care in the world. And it was just beautiful. And she really seemed to be getting a lot better. And it kind of took my eye off the ball. So for her to take her own life just a month later was a horrible shock. Yeah, but that's one of my happiest memories. My other memories of her are really just like she was a homebody, so she just liked to hang around at home and bake cakes and make pasta, just watch telly. She was no trouble at all. So it was such a shock, such a struggle when she began to withdraw and become sad and inaccessible. I wanted to take part in the Baton of Hope walk to raise awareness about suicide risk in the trans community. The trans community are particularly at risk of poor mental health and completed suicide. The trans community is at far greater risk of poor mental health and suicidal ideation and completed suicide than any other member of society. I think there's heaps of reasons for this. I mean, the most obvious reason for increased mental health problems within the trans community is their literal denial of healthcare by our current government. There's increasing evidence that gender-affirming care is the best way to improve a trans person's mental health, and yet our government ignores it and in fact does the opposite, takes trans healthcare away, and in doing so also signposts trans people to mental health facilities to support them. They recognise that withdrawing trans healthcare increases suicidal ideation. They've written this in documents, and yet they don't seem to put two and two together and realise that increased suicidal ideation, will then equate to increased suicidal behaviour, and increased suicidal behaviour then links to increased successful completed suicide. So it's an absolute disgrace that they're able to take away, or they're prepared to take away, a trans person's healthcare and then signpost them to really not available mental health services. The mental health care that's being offered to trans people is secondary to what they really need, which is fully supportive, accessible, readily available physical health care for their transition. So as a doctor, it just infuriates me. I mean, I think we can take huge lessons from the testimonies of mainly gay men who grew up as teenagers in the 1980s under Margaret Thatcher's Section 28 and the AIDS crisis. They were so othered, and they described such feelings of shame and not being able to come out to their families and friends, feeling very isolated and othered, feeling different from other people and being told you're different, and having your treatment that you need denied you, makes you feel helpless and hopeless and worthless, and these things lead to increased suicidal ideation. Our government is acting to exacerbate this problem rather than reduce it. Trans people appear to be, amongst our political class and amongst our media, second-rate citizens who aren't deserving the same level of respect, care and dignity as any other person. And as the parent of a trans person who took their own life, that is horrific to me. The government is introducing new RSE guidance for schools, which comes into effect in 2026. And part of that guidance is very similar to Margaret Thatcher's Section 28, in that it is telling teachers that they can't really talk about gender identity in schools. The word transgender is practically eliminated from the guidance. They want to teach that gender is binary, which completely ignores intersex people and doesn't allow trans people and non-binary people to talk about themselves or feel safe at school at all. This is completely shocking to me and is going to exacerbate mental health problems amongst young trans people at school. I get asked a lot, what would I say to parents of children who say that they're questioning their gender or they are trans? And it feels like such a difficult question because I feel like I hold so much responsibility to get it right because I didn't get it quite right for Alice all the time. And she found it so hard to talk to us about what she was experiencing, and I wasn't the best at receiving or listening to what her problems were. I was anxious when she told me that she was trans. I was scared. I'd absorbed quite a lot of stuff that I'd read in the press about it being a phase, or she might have been groomed by someone online. And I know all this now not to be true, of course, but I was susceptible to some of the media anti-trans sentiment, and it prevented me getting my daughter the help and support she needed for a short while. But I soon came around when I realised that transitioning was what she needed to make her better. And when we did support her and her gender was affirmed, you saw her lift, you saw her grow, and we got our old Alice back, that happy, bubbly, smiling, confident child. Well, the first thing I would say is that just believe your child, just really speak to them and trust them and try not to get angry with them. You might be feeling quite angry or you might be feeling very, very anxious, but just try to listen to them and support them and then get some help fast. Don't try to do this on your own. So find some queer journalism, go to Queer AF, just do a bit of research and contact trans organisations, like Gendered Intelligence and Mermaid and Gyres, who will all support you. Don't mistrust them like I did. Yeah, they're on your side. The people who know most about trans people and trans healthcare are trans people, okay? The people that you need to talk to are the people with lived experience. I have met so many trans people after Alice died, and if only I had met them before she died, I think I would have understood her better and I would have been able to express my love for her and my joy for her much more easily than I was able to without knowing trans people. Find a supportive GP. If a GP says they're supportive, that might not mean they are. They might think they're supportive. You need to ask some deep questions. And this is why you need to go to the trans organisations to find out what those questions even are and how to kind of spot the answers that don't kind of fit. I really trusted my GP and Alice's GP. When my GP said that Alice needed time to think, I believed her, and that delayed everything. And she was the expert and I wasn't. So make yourself the expert, okay? I'd also say be really, really careful about some of the support groups that you might find online because they sound warm and fluffy and kind and that they want to help you, but actually they encourage conversion practice and their main goal is for your child not to transition. And you might feel quite drawn to that at first because you're scared of your child's transition, but believe me, this is not the way to go. Affirming your child is by far the best option, please. I wrote my memoir, her name is Alice, kind of by accident, really. I was scrolling through endless emails that I hadn't opened, thousands and thousands of emails in my inbox in the months after Alice died. And I just came across an invitation to enter a memoir competition, the Bridport International Literary Prize, And there was like 2 days to the deadline, and I had to submit 7,000 words, and I just sat down at my dining room table, and it came out like a stream of consciousness, and I sent it off, and I thought nothing more about it. Then, much to my surprise, several months later, I found out I'd been longlisted, and I had to write another 10,000 words, and I hadn't done anything. So again, I sat down at my table, and I wrote for a week on and off, and sent it again, and I got shortlisted, and the process rolled on from there, and all of a sudden I had a literary agent and a book deal, and it was kind of quite simple and straightforward, really, which is a kind of weird thing to say when it was about something so tragic and devastating. But it just came out of me, it poured out of me, and I think it was after years of being ignored and dismissed and being quashed by the NHS, being told that we couldn't have this and we couldn't have this and we were wrong. I write about it in my book. I talk about how one nurse said I was very demanding and difficult, and that my childhood made bad lifestyle choices. So the transphobia that we encountered in the NHS was absolutely shocking. And I wrote the book so that people could understand that. I wanted them to become really engaged with our story. It's a human story. It's a story about love and loss. We're just a regular, messy, kind of middle class family that lots of people can identify with, and I want people to be drawn into our story and realise and see what actually happened to Alice and how it could have been different. And I want them to care and see trans people as humans, just like any other human. They absolutely are, and they deserve to live a life full of joy and excitement and opportunity, just like anybody else. Doctors have this thing we sign up to called the Hippocratic Oath, and one of the things in it is to do no harm. And I think this is not really considered for trans people, because current state of trans healthcare is doing so much harm to them, but it's a kind of harm by omission, so kind of somehow that doesn't seem to count, which is rather strange. Ultimately, what I want the government to do is to withdraw the puberty blocker ban, so that children can be given puberty blockers in order for their assessment to take place without them experiencing distress at puberty progressing at a rate of knots, a puberty that they don't recognise, and makes them anxious, scared and distressed. I would like to see gender services incorporated much more into primary care. GPs are just completely absolving themselves of any responsibility for gender care, and it's completely unnecessary for it to be so gatekept and to be in a tertiary centre miles away from home with experts who aren't available for years. I know from Alice's inquest that Dr. James Barrett, who was the lead clinician at the Tavistock when Alice was referred there but never seen, he said he could teach GPs to treat gender distress, gender dysphoria, trans patients, whatever you want to call it, in a 2-hour session. So why GPs say it's too complicated and difficult to do, I've no idea. They need to explain that to me. And if we were to be able to do that, to give the GPs the confidence to treat trans patients, then that would just completely reduce the backlog and the gatekeeping, and people would be seen in a timely manner, because you can't tell a 13-year-old who's approaching puberty that they've got to wait 10 years to be seen, because puberty has come and gone by then, and it's, you can just imagine how hopeless and helpless they feel. They need treatment in the here and now, not in the future. Thank you.